Hello, everyone.
Los Angeles, the dazzling city that never sleeps, suddenly turned into a nightmare. The blue skies, usually bathed in the glittering California sun, were now cloaked in thick smoke, turning blood red. The sound of sirens wailed incessantly, interspersed with desperate cries from residents struggling to escape one of the largest wildfires in the city's history. Amid the chaos, Aiden, a firefighter with 15 years of service, stood staring at the towering wall of flames before him. The hot Santa Ana winds blew fiercely, as if breathing life into the ferocious fire. Within minutes, the buildings around where he stood crumbled into ashes. "It's impossible for us to control this," shouted Aiden's colleague, his face drenched in sweat and dust. But it wasn't just the fire that left Aiden in awe. In the distance, he saw a majestic white building standing tall, surrounded by a sea of fire, the Nurul Iman Mosque. The structure seemed to glow amidst the dark, smoke-covered sky, untouched by even a lick of flame. "Look at that!" Aiden exclaimed, his voice trembling as he pointed to the mosque. His colleagues paused for a moment. What they saw defied logic. Every building around the mosque had been reduced to rubble, including the community center just a few meters away. Yet the mosque stood firm, as if protected by an unseen force. Inside the mosque, Imam Sheikh Ahmad and a few congregants were deeply engrossed in prayer. Thick smoke had begun enveloping the area around the mosque since morning, and they knew the fire could engulf their sanctuary at any moment. Yet, instead of panicking, they chose to bow before Allah, seeking His protection. "Allah is the ultimate protector," Sheikh Ahmad said calmly to the anxious congregants. "If we place our trust in Him, nothing can harm us without His permission." Outside, the fire crept closer, consuming everything in its path. Some congregants, unable to evacuate in time, could only surrender to fate. But from the mosque's windows, they witnessed something extraordinary. When the fire reached the mosque's grounds, the winds suddenly swirled in a strange way, forming an invisible barrier around the building. The flames never touched the mosque's walls. Elsewhere in the city, Maria, a local journalist, heard bizarre reports about a mosque that had survived in the midst of the inferno. Maria was not one to believe in mystical phenomena, but her curiosity drove her to investigate. "I need to see it for myself," she muttered, adjusting her camera as she headed toward the location. When Maria arrived, she was stunned. The mosque was completely intact. Even the white paint on its walls remained pristine, a stark contrast to the blackened ashes covering the surrounding ground. She approached one of the firefighters. "What happened here?" she asked. The firefighter shook his head, glancing at the mosque. "I don't know. We saw the fire stop as if something was blocking it. I've been doing this job for years, but I've never seen anything like this." Maria switched on her camera, beginning to document the miracle. Through her lens, she realized that the story of this white mosque wasn't just about a fire. It was about something much greater, about faith, prayer, and an invisible force that defied logic. Maria couldn't stop thinking about the extraordinary sight she had just witnessed. That night, she sat in her car, replaying the video of the white mosque that remained intact amidst the devastation. In the footage, the mosque seemed to glow, standing in stark contrast to the blackened landscape and ruins surrounding it. "Is this just a coincidence?" she murmured, trying to find a logical explanation. As a journalist who prioritized facts, Maria was used to uncovering the truth. But this time, what she had witnessed felt beyond human comprehension. Determined to uncover more, She resolved to return to the mosque the next morning to gather first-hand accounts from the witnesses. The following morning, Maria arrived at the mosque, now the center of attention. Local residents, firefighters, and journalists from various outlets had gathered in its courtyard. In front of the crowd, Imam Sheikh Ahmad stood calmly, recounting the events. When the fire came, all we could do was surrender to Allah. We had no fire extinguishers, no help, just prayer. We continued reciting verses from the Quran. Seeking protection from the Almighty, Sheikh Ahmad said, his voice soft but filled with conviction. Maria approached one of the congregants who still seemed awestruck. His name was Karim, a volunteer who regularly assisted with activities at the mosque. We thought it was the end. The smoke was so thick, the fire so close. But somehow the fire stopped at the mosque's courtyard. It was as if there was an invisible wall protecting us, Karim explained. Maria carefully noted down every word, but her mind swirled with questions. How is this possible? What really happened here? Meanwhile, Aiden, the firefighter who had been the first to witness the mosque's miraculous survival, couldn't shake the memory either. After his shift, he visited the mosque, hoping to speak directly with those who had been there. This is the first time I've ever felt small, Aiden admitted to Sheikh Ahmad when they met inside the mosque. I've always believed in science, in logical explanations, but this can't be explained. Sheikh Ahmad smiled gently. Sometimes, Allah's power transcends human logic. Perhaps this is his way of reminding us that there's something greater than ourselves. Aiden nodded, still grappling with the Imam's words. He looked around the mosque, taking in its details. The white dome towering above, the pristine walls without a single stain, and the neatly arranged Qurans on the shelves. It all looked as though untouched, despite the raging inferno that had engulfed the area. But it wasn't just those at the mosque who were affected by this event. News of the White Mosque surviving the flames spread quickly, even reaching international audiences. Major media outlets began covering the miracle, dubbing it a light in the darkness. On social media platforms, photos and videos of the mosque went viral. Many praised the event as a sign of God's power, while others questioned how such a phenomenon could occur. Discussions about the White Mosque grew, drawing attention from believers and skeptics alike. That evening, Maria sat in the mosque's courtyard with a few congregants who remained awake, sharing stories of what they had felt during the fire. She sensed something shifting within her, as if the mosque's miracle had opened a door to a world she had never understood before. To me, this mosque is a reminder that there's something greater than what we can see or touch, an elderly congregant said in a raspy voice. Maria looked at the White Mosque once more. Its dome reflected the moonlight, radiating a sense of peace that was hard to describe. For the first time in her life, Maria felt that perhaps there were things that could never be fully explained by logic alone. Maria began her day with a newfound purpose. The miracle she had witnessed at the Nur al-Aman Mosque had changed her perspective on many things, and now she felt compelled to search for deeper answers. The camera and notebook in her hands were no longer just tools for work, but weapons in her quest for the truth. That morning, the mosque was once again filled with people from all walks of life. Some came to pray while others came out of curiosity. Maria observed how everyone was greeted with warm smiles by the congregants and Sheikh Ahmad. Everyone is welcome here, regardless of their religion or beliefs, Sheikh Ahmad said when Maria inquired about the many non-Muslim visitors. This mosque is a home for all who seek peace. Maria noticed an elderly woman sitting in the corner of the mosque's courtyard, gazing at the building with deep emotion. The woman introduced herself as Mrs. Carter, a retired teacher who had lived near the mosque for decades. "I'm not Muslim," Mrs. Carter said, her voice trembling, "but I know one thing. This mosque is not just an ordinary building. When the fire came close, I felt there was something protecting all of us, not just those inside the mosque." Maria carefully recorded those words. This miracle wasn't just about the mosque surviving the fire, but about how the mosque brought a sense of safety and peace to everyone around it. regardless of their differences. Meanwhile, Aiden returned to the mosque with a small group of fellow firefighters. They were the same colleagues who had witnessed the miracle that night. One of them, a young man named Ryan, seemed deeply affected. "Since that night, I feel like something is missing in my life," Ryan said to Sheikh Ahmad. "I don't know what it is, but I want to learn more." Sheikh Ahmad welcomed them with a warm smile. He explained that the mosque wasn't just a place of worship, but also a place to share knowledge and wisdom. "The fire may have been a test, but it is also a lesson for all of us," Sheikh Ahmad said. Aiden, usually skeptical of spiritual matters, began to feel something different. "For years I've been putting out fires, thinking we could control everything. But that night, I realized there is a power much greater than us." Elsewhere, Maria decided to meet with a wildfire expert to get a scientific explanation. Dr. Nathan Harris, a researcher at the University of California, had studied wildfire patterns in Los Angeles for years. Theoretically, there's no scientific reason why the mosque remained intact, Dr. Harris said as he examined Maria's photos. The Santa Ana winds should have pushed the fire straight toward the mosque. All the buildings around it burned, but the mosque, it's like there was a barrier protecting it. Maria nodded, but she knew that this story couldn't be explained solely from a scientific perspective. There was something bigger than just facts and data. A few days later, a small event again caught Maria's attention. A man named Alex, once known as a staunch skeptic of religion, came to the mosque to speak with Sheikh Ahmad. Alex was an architect who had been involved in the mosque's renovation a few years prior. "I don't believe in miracles," Alex said, "but I know the construction of this building. The materials are ordinary, nothing special. If the other buildings around here could be destroyed, this mosque should have been destroyed too. But look at it, not even a scratch." Sheikh Ahmad smiled and said wisely, "Sometimes, Allah shows his signs through things that cannot be explained. Not to prove his power, but to remind us to return to him." That day, Maria realized that the miracle of Nur al-Aman Mosque was not just about the walls surviving the flames. The miracle was how this mosque inspired those around it, both the believers and the skeptics, to reflect on life, the power of prayer, and the greatness of the Creator. Maria gazed at the mosque's glowing dome under the afternoon sun. She knew her search was not over. But one thing was clear to her. This mosque was a sign, not only for Muslims but for all of humanity. A sign that hope, faith, and unity could emerge even in the greatest of tragedies. Where there is the fire of destruction, there Allah can ignite the light of hope.